Chapter 20, Geometric Thinking and Geometric Concepts.
Yes, there should be an S there. This chapter can be described in four basic key ideas. 1. Shapes are alike or different based on properties. Notice this square, circle, and diamond. The circle is alike with the square because of this line of symmetry, and the diamond is alike based on its number of sides. The second key idea in this chapter is that shapes can be moved. Take this shape, for example. It can be moved in 4 different ways. The first way is that it can be flipped. Also, it can be reflected, it can be rotated, and finally, it can just be translated. The third key idea in this chapter is that shapes can be described by location. We're going to stick this square on a grid, and notice that I can describe this shape's location by using a coordinate system. Finally, the fourth key idea in this chapter is that shapes have perspective. Take this square, for example. It can be described in a two-dimensional way or as a three-dimensional cube. These are the key ideas in this chapter. And the key ideas can be understood by students through this development of spatial sense. Now, what is spatial sense? In our chapter, spatial sense can be defined as an intuition about shapes and the relationship among shapes. In other words, spatial sense includes the ability to mentally visualize objects and spatial relationships. Now, there's this idea that some students are born with this innate ability to describe shapes, and some are not.
However, this is not true.
So if this is not true, then how do we develop spatial sense or geometric thinking? The development of geometric thinking is described by Van Hille's sequential levels, also known as Van Hille levels of development. A common misconception is that the levels of development are directly correlated with age and grade level. This is not true. For example, an 8th grader could be at level 0 while a 1st grader could actually be at level 2. The levels are as follows. Level 0 is visualization, classes of shape. Level 1 is analysis, or properties of shape. Level 2 is informal deduction, relationships among properties. Level 3 is deduction, or deductive systems of properties. And finally, level 4 is rigor, or the analysis of deductive systems, which is usually high school geometry. Now I'm going to show 8 possible activities to develop students' conceptual understanding. For the purposes of our class's focus on elementary math, the activities will be for level 0 through 2 students, which means I have picked activities out of our math book that correlate with the levels of visualization, or figuring out the classes of shapes, analysis, which is the properties of shapes, or informal deduction, which is towards the later grades of elementary math education. In the first activity, called Activity 20.1, students will sort shapes that seem to be alike. This activity emphasizes the conceptual idea of properties of shape. Notice how I will be highlighting all of the triangles. Another activity that reinforces the properties of shapes is Activity 20.4. Given linguistic cues, students should be able to visualize a shape. The shape visualized in this activity will be the circle. So I will highlight the circle. In Activity 20.3, students will sort shapes into classes. I'm going to take these triangles and sort them by their properties into different classes. The first triangle is an isosceles triangle. The second triangle is a right triangle. Our third is an acute, and finally the last two triangles are obtuse triangles. In activity 20.9, students will use diagonal strips to decide properties of these trapezoids. What's important for the students to understand is that a shape of a trapezoid will change based on the diagonals as to where they intersect, the length, and the angle. In activity 20.12, students will make two polygons from one polygon by drawing a diagonal. With this diagonal, students will notice how they split the shape into two different shapes, and they'll count how many sides there are all together. Watch how we count that the sides, there are 8 sides. In 20.30, given a viewpoint and the three-dimensional properties of a shape, students will visualize through informal deduction and analysis what the view from the back, front, left, and right of the shape would be. Notice how I'm drawing the different perspectives. In activity 20.28, students will also use their analysis and informal deduction strategies to determine what a shape looks like based on the faces of the shape. This shape would probably look something like this. And finally, in activity 20.21, students will work with a partner to determine hidden positions. A student will place 4 different shapes on a placemat, and their partner will have the same, and only through the description using words such as middle, top, left, right, bottom, and row will the partner be able to create the same place. Finally, as students develop spatial sense, they start to develop a conceptual understanding of the 4 principles of geometric thinking, and they do this through the process of Van Heil's levels of development. Thank you for listening.